Hello, my name is Grechishkin. I'm from Mount Vernon High School. I'm performing this original oratory for the 2020 Auburn Riverside Virtual Tournament. What are you ladies gossiping about? Hey, you're taking notes on this, right? You should smile more. What, is it that time of the month? This meeting is a big deal. You might want to wear your hair down for this one. Are you sure you can actually understand this? Calm down, you're being way too overdramatic. You're always blowing things out of proportion. No, sorry, this floor is for executives only. Interns go downstairs. These little phrases that run from well-meaning but poorly worded to intentional dismissal of a woman's ability are a daily occurrence in our lives defined as microaggressions, the death by 1,000 cuts. As reported in the study published in Women in the Workplace, 64% of women experience microaggressions, discouraging career goals and leading to physical and mental harms. Only by first recognizing these statements as a form of structural violence, and then acknowledging our own role in perpetuating these harms, can we finally move towards creating spaces that are more inclusive for women and all genders. Sexism permeates every aspect of our culture, and when these microaggressions are present in a form that has become familiar and palpable to us all, it becomes even more difficult to identify it and call it out. We've all seen the classic Valley Girl accent play out in pop culture. Brittany from Daria, Cher from Clueless, and most of the main female characters in Heathers all share the hallmark quavering voice that peaks up in intonation at the end of the sentence. This phenomenon is actually something referred to as uptalk. And as explained by a study conducted by the University of California, this actually reverts all the way back to the 1950s and originated as a unique way for the speaker to hold their ground as they're speaking. Graduate student Amanda Reichart explains that by placing a unique emphasis on the end of the sentence, women use a technique called foreholding, where an interruption is anticipated and then held off uniquely because of the way that the sentence is spoken. Women are more likely to use uptalk because they're the ones who have consistently been spoken over and ignored in professional and social settings. And yet, society ignores this nuance. And now, uptalk is seen as something that's a joke to throw around, something that's a signal of a shallow woman of low intelligence. These pressures on women actually extend into a professional setting as well. Susan Fleming, senior lecturer at Cornell, describes how women are placed into a unique double bind when they work in leadership positions. If women have a more feminine leadership style that focuses on communal and gentle traits, they're seen as weak or a pushover by their peers. On the other hand, when women take on more masculine leadership traits, they're seen as overbearing and bossy, when these exact same actions are met with support and praise in men for their strong leadership. This trend of capable and intelligent women being looked down upon continues through mansplaining. Present everywhere from the classroom to Twitter, mansplaining has only become a common term in the late 2000s, despite being present for the duration of the patriarchy. Kate Mann, author of the book entitled, explains that numerous societal components all work in tandem and have made mansplaining a mainstay in today's society. The first is the assumption on the part of the man that a woman can't possibly know as much as he does on the subject. This goes along with the socialization all men undergo to make them feel as if they are constantly the most powerful and the most assertive in the relationship. This then again works with the tandem with the socialization women have undergone to be polite and avoid interrupting when someone else is speaking. The term empathy actually describes women's reluctance to call out mansplaining even if they are experts on a subject, due to conditioning that creates feelings of guilt upon producing shame in men that they feel upon being corrected. Mansplaining furthers societal perception of males as those who are wisest and most capable, and continues the degradation of women worldwide. When motifs of sexism are present throughout society, internalized misogyny becomes commonplace and adds even more undue pressure to women. There are two key impacts that construct internalized misogyny: self-objectification and the acceptance of gender roles. According to Utah State University, these impacts cause distress, identity foreclosure, disorder, eating, and mental illness. The idea that women can avoid the impacts of sexism if they conform to societal norms causes a turn towards harsh beauty standards and a forced perception of other women as competition. Allowing for sexism to go unnoticed when it isn't overt creates harsh impacts on all genders that go unnoticed and have become our new status quo. When women are subjected to misogyny on a daily basis, the physical and emotional impacts are devastating. For starters, negative stereotyping harms women's careers by making them less likely to join male-dominated fields and less likely to be offered promotions or leadership positions across all areas of study. Research from the Psychology of Women Quarterly additionally found that experiences of sexism shared similar symptoms to PTSD and made women more likely to binge drink or smoke as a coping mechanism. Double standards and societal stereotypes make the chances of mental illness due to sexism higher. And sexism that seems indirect leads directly to real-world violence. Because according to the University of Sussex, sexism directly contributes to and perpetuates rape culture, and makes violence against women seem excusable and more easy to brush off than it should be. These impacts grow beyond the individual scale and manifest themselves on the international and global stages. In the United States, this is seen through the lack of female representation in politics. The Democratic primaries this year had one of the most diverse candidate pools we've seen in recent years. And yet, despite the Democratic Party priding themselves on inclusivity and progressive ideas towards gender, covert sexism was still a driving factor in candidate selection. A Washington Post analysis split up primary voters into 4 categories, ranging from least to most hostile sexism. Then, the votes were split up and analyzed within each category. Within the least sexist quartile, Elizabeth Warren was neck and neck with candidate Joe Biden for votes. However, when the most sexist quartile was analyzed, this percentage dropped by an astounding 30%. Additionally, a Utah State University study found that women who experienced higher levels of internalized misogyny were more likely to support candidates who promoted sexist ideals and misogynistic policies when voting. These factors both act as barriers to a representative government, hurting our democracy as well as global soft power. And this exclusion of women is mirrored on a global stage as well. Stereotypes that cause the devaluation of women leave them out of crucial discussions and cause the whole world to suffer for it. Continual studies have noted that having women be involved in peacemaking decisions leads to better and more sustainable outcomes. And yet, still, only 9% of UN peace negotiators are women. When women are excluded from these discussions, issues that impact marginalized groups are ignored or swept under the rug, and it becomes more difficult for long-lasting, truly equitable peace to be created. But the most difficult thing about addressing everyday sexism is that it seems normal for all of us. But by training ourselves to call ourselves as well as others when we feed into sexist actions, it becomes easier to break down the barriers that women face step by step. Asking the perpetrator questions that call for clarification is an easy way to call out internalized sexism without making the perpetrator feel like they are being attacked. This thus makes them more likely to be open to listening and educating themselves on the harms that their voice and words hold. Additionally, for women, confronting internalized misogyny and sexism can involve reaching out to a therapist or beginning to deconstruct the idealized version of a woman that society has constructed in your mind. These small actions may not feel life-changing initially, and it's going to take a lot of work to break down the patriarchy. But by looking at ourselves in our everyday lives and realizing that we all feed into sexist actions, it becomes easier for us to produce tangible change that will gradually spill up and lead to creating a world where possibilities for women and inclusion for women is no longer a question, but instead is an expectation.